welcome back to Prophetic Fitness. I'm Ben Armstrong. I'm so excited to be with you. This is session number 2. This session is all about our identity and all about being able to connect with God to find our own personal identity. You know, last time we talked, I made a statement in there that said we train here at the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry and at Bethel Church. We train that we prophesy from a strong identity, not for one. And it's so important to be able to have the tools to learn how to encourage ourselves and grow ourselves in our own identity and relationship with God. You know, we find our identity, we find our worth, we find our value from God Himself. But how do we connect with that? We become like the one we behold. So knowing who God is foundational to find out who we are. And so spending time, whenever I have an attack or I feel like I don't know who I am, or I'm losing my identity, or I'm having a real hard time finding worth or value in myself, I stop and I begin to worship. The number one thing that helps me is to stop, begin to close my eyes, worship, to see God, and I begin to declare who He is. I begin to declare what He's done in my life. And as I begin to behold Him and see Him, then the lack in my own identity and my worth begins to rise, because as I see Him, I realize I was created in His image. Both male and female, we were created in God's image. And so no matter who you are or what you're doing, when you begin to see God, you see His character, you see His goodness, you rehearse the testimonies of what He's done in your life, we begin to realize, oh, this is also who I am. This is also what I do. Spending time in His presence is so important, and allowing Him to speak to us, allowing Him to actually tell us what He sees in us, how He feels about us, is really important for us to remember who we are. So 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, it says this: cast down every imagination and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. You know, I love this scripture, but unfortunately, many times in the church, we read this scripture and we hear, cast down every imagination. And we think our imagination is actually something that's bad. But that's not what this scripture says. It says, cast down every imagination and high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. So we're talking about getting rid of bad imaginations, things that actually take you away from who God really is and takes you away from who you really are in your own identity. So how do we actually use our redeemed imagination? It says this in Philippians 4 verse 8, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, that we're supposed to think about these things. You know, God is all of that. And so we can actually use our redeemed imagination. And part of what I want to give you guys today in this session is an ability to connect with God, to actually see who He is, and from that place hear who you are. And we do this exercise a lot in our school of ministry. We'll just take a few minutes, and at the end of this video, what I want you to do is I want you to take some time. I want you to set aside some time to actually just get quiet before God and begin to remember. Begin to remember who He is. What does the Bible say about Him? He is the one who's pure. He's holy. He's trustworthy. He's trustworthy. He is the King of Kings. He is the Lord of Lords. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's the bread of life. He is the high and lifted up God. He's holy and anointed. All of these things. And I begin to rehearse that over and over. I begin to remember the testimonies of what He's done in my life. The times where He provided for me. The times where He actually came and comforted me when I needed comfort. The time where He came in and He redeemed me from a sinful life. All of those things are things that I take a moment and I quiet my spirit. And I begin to use my redeemed imagination to picture as if God was sitting in front of me. As if He was right there. God, what do you say about me? God, what do you have? What do you feel about me? And I begin to listen. And I begin to look at Him and begin to receive from the identity of who God is. And as I do, I begin to build myself up in my own personal identity. What we do many times is we say to our students, hey, take a piece of paper and put it out in front of you as you're doing this exercise in identity, and write down the things that God says about you. Because if we can't get a prophetic word for ourselves from God, then how can we be trusted to give a prophetic word to someone else? It's about knowing and hearing the voice of God for ourselves. And it's really important in this exercise that you just take some time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some time at the end of this time to set aside, grab a piece of paper, grab a pencil. Maybe you need to put on some worship music. That's great. But we're going to actually exercise, use our redeemed imagination. So we're using 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. We're actually taking all of the things that line up with the knowledge of God, and we're writing those things down. What God says, who He is, what He says about me. Write those down. And then finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, lovely, admirable, think about these things. We're actually working on an identity statement. As you write those things down, what God says about you, this creates an identity statement that you can post on your fridge, that you can post around, so that you actually become the person who's positive about themselves, because we can only give what we ourselves have. And so if we get encouraged by God, guess what? We can be an encouragement to others. When we get built up by God in our own identity, guess what? We can start discovering and recognizing the identity of who others are as well, and grow in that. So take some time and just write down some things, connect with God, and begin to build yourself up in your identity. And then from that place, go out today and look for someone that you can encourage as well, that you can actually tell them, hey, you know what? I see this great thing in you. You don't even have to call it prophecy. Just encourage people. When you see someone behind the counter at Starbucks and you see them working hard, maybe having a hard day, but they're doing a good job, encourage them. Let them know that is the foundation of the prophetic, and is the heart of what we want to give to others as well. All right. Bless you, and we'll see you next time.